Hello and welcome to the 700 Club. Some major changes in Washington. Congress has passed a massive spending bill overnight, well over $1 trillion. It includes a measure to end the pay-to-slay policy of the Palestinian Authority. And President Trump is taking some strong actions, bringing in a new national security advisor while cracking down on China's trade practices. Jennifer Wishon brings us the story.
The motion to concur is agreed to.
In the wee hours of the morning, lawmakers gave the thumbs up to a $1.3 trillion spending plan to fund the government through September. It received bipartisan support, but conservatives in both houses railed against it, complaining they had just 7 hours to read the 2,200-page bill, with one member tweeting that it was the length of 2 Bibles. The price tag, they say, is too high and includes line items they can't stomach, like money for Planned Parenthood. But one item in the measure both sides celebrated, the Taylor Force Act, named for an American combat veteran brutally murdered by a Palestinian terrorist while visiting Israel. His killer was taken down by Israeli Defense Forces, but when the terrorist's body was returned to Ramallah, he was welcomed home a hero.
The Palestinian government gave his family a big sum of money. They rewarded him as a martyr. This bill, the Taylor Force Act, suspends all U.S. money to the Palestinian Authority until they change their laws, incentivizing their young people to kill Americans and Jews.
Senator Lindsey Graham tells CBN News it's a sick system that's too lucrative for some Palestinians to resist.
Under Palestinian law, you'll make more money being a terrorist than a worker.
When Taylor Force's parents heard the news, Graham says they burst into tears. They've worked hard to ensure their son didn't die in vain.
If you'd want your son to do all the right things, have them look up Taylor, because he did.
On the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, a shakeup in the president's inner circle. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster is retiring from the Army and will be replaced by John Bolton, former ambassador to the UN and outspoken hawk on foreign affairs.
Well, I think the National Security Advisor and the entire structure of national security decision-making in the United States is intended to be flexible.
Bolton echoes Trump's tough policies against North Korea, coming in as the administration plans a sensitive meeting between the president and Kim Jong-un. His new position also increases the chance the U.S. will pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. Relations with China are also tense after the president announced new tariffs on as much as $60 billion in Chinese imports to the U.S. It's a bold America First move. Trump says he's trying to correct the nation's $800 billion trade deficit with the world, half of which comes from China.
I really believe they cannot believe they've gotten away with this for so long.
China responded today, announcing a list of American goods like apples, pork, and steel that may be hit with higher import duties.
A trade war will not help anybody.
The president says he's doing things for the country that should have been done long ago. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Always lots going on in Washington. It is wonderful to see that support for the pay-to-slay program or policy coming to an end, long overdue. Well, in other news, a remarkable confession from the serial bomber in Texas. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Terry. Mark Condit said, "I wish I were sorry, but I'm not." Those were his own words he recorded on his cell phone, according to a report in the Austin American-Statesman newspaper. Condit killed 2 people and injured 5 others before he blew himself up this week when police caught up to him. Sources told the paper Condit described himself as a psychopath and said he felt like he'd been disturbed since childhood. He also threatened to blow himself up in a crowded McDonald's if he thought authorities were closing in. Well, the Apostle Paul is one of the most important biblical figures of the New Testament, and his story hits the big screen today, just as Christians prepare to celebrate Palm Sunday this weekend and Easter next weekend. Ephraim Graham sat down with the film's stars and its director.
Keep your voice down! Thrown into prison on conspiracy.
Set during a time of Christian persecution in Rome, Paul, apostle of Christ, focuses on his final days in prison. James Faulkner plays the role of Paul.
I don't recall the feeling as a child. It was, for me, a transformative experience to play Paul.
How so?
You cannot say those words without believing them. You cannot say those words without it changing you. What did you tell them?
Love is the only way.
Jim Caviezel plays the role of Luke, who risks his life to visit Paul in prison.
What is it about Luke that made you say, yeah, this is the return?
It wasn't necessarily about Luke. It was finding the right story. It wasn't a film that just beat you over the head. I realized that this movie can, someone who doesn't know who God is, I mean, anything about him, that it would have a massive effect on it.
The film's director, Andrew Hyatt, also wrote the film. For him, Paul's story is his story.
I walked away from the church for about 7 years, and then I had a major reconversion back, very much in the vein of St. Paul, a Damascus Road type experience.
It's a story that touched many on the set.
Is this preparing you for the follow-up to Passion?
Most definitely. It's part of the plan. It's part of the way. And it doesn't mean that we're going to not have any crosses along the way. The Passion of the Christ had a cross that was just that close to taking my life. But would I change that direction? No, it was the greatest thing ever.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, Dallas, Texas.
Thanks, Ephraim. And you can find out where Paul, Apostle of Christ, is showing in your area by going to cbnnews.com. And Terry, it's great to see Hollywood producing more and more faith-based films.
Boy, it sure is. And that's going to be a wonderful film to see as we come upon this holiday.